Muchachos y muchachas, right before Super Bowl, I made a big rant about this new rhetoric that we're seeing in the headlines about Super Bowl and human trafficking. There is no correlation, or there's a fake link, or that this has become a myth all of a sudden. And I really did a deep dive. Well, not a deep dive, but I did some digs. I gave you guys some sauce on why I believe this is really harmful to the counter trafficking industry, and how this can possibly affect actual victims out there that are within the life, because it's really an indiscreet industry. These are things that are happening in an underground setting, things happening under the table. So how can we truly quantify what is actually going on, especially when it comes to a main attraction like Super Bowl or any other sporting event? Well, back to it. There are so many different headlines nowadays that are trying to portray this narrative that it's not really a big deal. There's no big link. This is usual. This is what happens. You're just seeing it more because they're planning operations, which is quite contradicting, because why would they be planning operations if they might have intel that, more activity might be being planned around the event, and I even spoke to some survivors that actually lead a ministry. They are an intake and aftercare organization in Oregon called One's Purpose. You guys should go check them out, ownerspurpose.com. They actively take in trafficking survivors almost every day. And, these survivor leaders actually came from the industry. They were victims themselves at one point. They got out and they were confused at all this. Where did this come from? Where did this spring up from? Why all of a sudden is this a myth? Why is this all of a sudden a fake link to the Super Bowl? Because, there are many logistics that they witness themselves, with the pimps, the traffickers making big plans for this. Well, that rant that I did paid dividends, because guess what? Apparently, at least 500 Johns were arrested within an operation targeting this around the Super Bowl. Many were actually rescued out of this. Some of them were children. Oh yeah, stay right there. We're going to go through it. Friends, we live in a world that's slipping away into constant uncertainty and danger. Imagine if something unthinkable happens tomorrow. Within hours, global supply chains can break down and never start up again. We've learned that lesson the hard way. And that means the smart thing to do is to prepare for the worst. Even if the peanut butter hasn't hit the fan yet, you should store emergency food that can get you through whatever happens next. And we highly recommend My Patriot Supply, America's largest emergency preparedness company. Act now and save $50 off their popular 4-week emergency food kits, which contains an abundance of delicious food that provides over 2,000 calories a day. Every person in your family should have at least one of these. Your shipment will arrive quickly in unmarked boxes. Go to preparewithnatalie.com and save $50 on each 4-week supply food kit you purchase. That's preparewithnatalie.com to avoid being a victim and survive the coming uncertainty. Preparewithnatalie.com. All right. So I gave you guys my examples in the prior video I made right before Super Bowl, ranting about this. And I gave you guys some sauce, some old articles that contradicted the mainstream narrative as we see it current day. And, I would encourage you to go watch that rant, because it's very relative. They might do this for any other thing. They might do it for, some other reason that we know causes the big problem within human trafficking. But the reason why I wanted to make a follow-up video is because this rant paid dividends. Take a look at this. Now, this is how it started, right? And I pointed this out both on my Twitter as well as my Instagram. This is coming from the Los Angeles Times. This is a story that they were circulating. This is what they published right before Super Bowl, February 6th. It says, the dangerously fake link between Super Bowl and human trafficking. Imagine. Just plain old, just because Los Angeles Times said it's a fake link, that's what they're going to run with. That's the juice. That's the sauce. Just because it's a fake link. Let's take a look at what they had to say. One of the more entrenched Super Bowl traditions is the reminder that the annual NFL championship game is linked to a spike in human trafficking. The statement is solemnly repeated by law enforcement officials, elected leaders, and news outlets, although the details are left to imagination. Interesting. Imagination. Imagine that Los Angeles Times is simplifying this problem, a problem against humanity, crimes against humanity, as an imagination, an imaginative theory. The theory, they say, is that thousands of men travel to the host city, which this year is in Inglewood, Los Angeles, and while waiting or recovering from the big game, they go looking for sex, which is provided by women and girls who have been forced into sexual slavery by traffickers. Imagine. This is what they're saying. This is imaginative. This is just something that people are portraying. And I read you this claim by a Notre Dame professor of law. She was an assistant professor of law. And in her stand, she was like, well, this is a big virtue signal by corporations. They just want to make themselves look better. I'm like, please tell me who. Tell me who. There's not a group of corporations out there that are trying to make themselves look better by combating and giving more awareness to the activity of human trafficking. I wish there was. I really do. Even if they were virtue signaling, it would be worth it because more awareness would be out there. I wish there would be the Coca-Colas, the Pepsis, the Targets, the Walmarts, the Tangerines. You know how Tangerines now market, promotions and stuff. I wish there were a group of people with big names out there that would actually make this a campaign. But please tell me, where have you seen it that there have been a group of businesses and corporations that do this? I haven't seen one. And it continues. It's a myth, they say. This is a myth. Let me just remind you what they just said before that. The idea is that around the Super Bowl, thousands of men travel to the city, which is true. Thousands of men do travel to the city. And recovering and waiting for the big game, they look for sex, which is provided by women and girls who have been forced into sexual slavery by traffickers. It's a myth, they say. It's been debunked many times over, including some leading organizations that fight trafficking. Interesting. Trafficking in human beings and compelling them to sexual activity or labor domestically and across international borders is a very real and serious problem that requires attention and sources to combat. But trafficking is not increased by sporting events. So why does the falsehood persist? Los Angeles Times asks. And why is it repeated each year by officials and news outlets who ought to know better? Why, for example, did LA County Sheriff 𝘱�ㄐ weigh in last month with the warning that the game ends up being one of the major events that draws human traffickers to the region? And why did the city-state officials hold a news conference at Los Angeles International Airport to warn trafficking connected with the event? Because maybe it happens, Los Angeles Times. You want to know how I know? Because you guys just reported on your own platform that nearly 500 were arrested in a statewide human trafficking organization operation. I mean, this is their own publication, guys. This is days apart. Look at this. February 15th, 2022 is when they published this article. And this one that I just read from was published February 6th, 2022. This is literally about 9 days apart that they published these two back to back. Look at their original article from 9 days ago. Look at what they're saying. Look at what they're saying right here. This is like the Atlantic all over again. Panic over sexual abuse of children and human trafficking is good for law enforcement business. It gives the police an opportunity to seek more resources and remind us that we need their services. Is this a Clown World article somewhere? Like, who typed this up? I'm sorry to yell, but this is complete bull. I'm going to say it. This is complete bullshit. How can you say that this is just a panic over sexual abuse of children? Excuse me. Have you not seen the statistic reported by a left-leaning source that's typically biased in Axios that at least 40% of the children from the border that were unaccompanied can no longer be contacted again? What are you talking about? So if you have no clue where these children end up or where they are, and you just have full faith in the system that they're just ended up okay and not in the hands of sexual predators, what are you talking about? Panic over sexual abuse of children and human trafficking is good for law enforcement business. This is what they're justifying human trafficking awareness as an imaginative panic. This honestly makes me so livid. So forwarding on in their own news publication, they have to report this. And I'm going to give you guys more. I'm going to give you guys actually more of sauce that is broken down, because listen to the way that they word this too. Coming from the Los Angeles Times, the same publication that purported that this is just all a myth. It's a fake link. There's nothing big going on around the Super Bowl. Nothing's happening. This is just overhyped. Well, guess what? 500 people have now been arrested in a statewide human trafficking operation. Authorities on Tuesday announced the results of a statewide crackdown on human trafficking that resulted in nearly 500 arrests, and more than 80 sex workers were helped. Listen to the verbiage. More than 80 sex workers were helped. What were they given? McDonald's? You know what I mean? Like, were they given a ride? What do you mean helped? Or do you mean that they were possibly rescued, possibly brought out the life, maybe, possibly? There's little, I kind of balance. I don't have too much faith in the system. I actually believe that, there needs to be more help and resources for people that want to come out the life. But, that's neither here or there right now. But, for the sake of this, they're saying 80 sex workers were helped. They don't mention rescued until later. Listen to this. Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villanueva detailed the results of the week-long campaign dubbed Operation Reclaim and Rebuild, which involves dozens of agencies around California. So you're forced to admit that after your criticism over Sheriff Alex Villanueva here, where you say, why, for example, did LA County Sheriff Alex Villanueva weigh in last month with a warning that the game ends up being one of the bigger events that draws human trafficking to the region? And why did the city and state officials hold a conference at the Los Angeles International Airport to warn of trafficking connected to the event? Maybe because it happened, as you just reported just now, as of hours ago. So you're going to dunk on the sheriff who's just doing his job. He's literally being transparent with the community, and might I add, the nationwide community, because yes, tens of thousands are visiting your city to attend the Super Bowl or the events thereof, right? So he's doing his job. LA Times. So Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villanueva detailed the results of a week-long campaign dubbed Operation Reclaim and Rebuild, which involved dozens of agencies around California. Villanueva said 34 suspected traffickers 34 suspected traffickers. But it's not, it's a myth. It's a fake link between the Super Bowl and overhype of human trafficking activity. It's a myth. But 34 people that were traffickers were arrested. Right here, 34 arrested, along with 201 people who were allegedly caught trying to buy sex. He did not account for the remaining arrests. About 6 dozen, listen to how they put this. Look at this, how they put this right here. About 6 dozen adults and 8 minors were rescued. Listen to the way they put this, you guys. Listen to the way that they are wording this. This is an active campaign against counter trafficking, against the awareness campaigns out there. 6 dozen adults, not 6 adults, 6 dozen. Way to try to get away with the wording, Los Angeles Times. Actually, 72 adults and 8 children were rescued. And look at rescued. Yes, rescued. Okay? Some of these people need rescuing because they're forced against their will, but you would never know that because you're over here putting rhetoric out there that people are imagining that this is fake because you put it out there. But yes, 72, let's fix that. 72 adults and 8 children were rescued out of a human trafficking operation surrounding Super Bowl, right? Right? All across the state, law enforcement agencies, it continues to read, joined us to send a message to pimps, exploiters, and buyers that it is unacceptable to buy another human being for sexual purposes, Sheriff Villanueva said. Thank you, Sheriff Villanueva. Thank you for your service. In Pittsburgh, a suburb in Contra Costa County, Pittsburgh, right? Pittsburgh. Authorities caught a man who was allegedly running a prostitution ring nationwide. So you're going to tell me that this isn't a problem and this is all a myth? But then they catch this trafficker who was caught running a nationwide ring. Right? But it's not a big deal. A search warrant turned up 2 handguns, an AR-15, a shotgun, a body armor, and 100 rounds of ammunition, Villanueva said. Listen to this. In Costa Mesa, he said, officers scheduled a date online with a woman. Police conducted a traffic stop of the man who had been driving her, during which they found an unregistered loaded gun. Villanueva said that authorities determined that the woman had been working for the man for 2 years, starting when she was a child. So was she 16 years old when she started getting trafficked? And that she's been under the thumb of this trafficker for 2 years. Was she 17, 16? But it's not a problem, guys. According to Los Angeles Times, this is overhyped and this is imaginative. Now, Sheriff Villanueva, he ends with this. That should kind of illustrate to you how pervasive this is. Once they get their claws on someone, they're going to continue exploiting them from childhood into adulthood. Thank you, Sheriff Villanueva, for telling it like it is. This is exactly how people should report exactly what is going on, right? So how dare you? How dare you? Any outlet, I don't care what your bias is, whether you're on the left or the right, how dare you say that this is imaginative and try to permeate this sort of rhetoric that is going to mislead people into thinking that this isn't a big deal when you have children who have been under the thumb of traffickers for years, forced against their will for years. And let me give you guys a little bit more sauce because Los Angeles Times wants to be a little bit dishonest with the way that they word things. KTLA, this is what they report about this operation. More than 80 victims rescued in LA human trafficking operation. Los Angeles Times said that it was just 6 dozen, right? Why not just say the number, Los Angeles Times? Is it too much? Is it too much for your narrative and for your agenda? More than 80 victims actually were rescued in a Los Angeles human trafficking operation, where Super Bowl was, right? Los Angeles law enforcement announced Tuesday that the rescue of more than 80 human trafficking and sexual exploitation victims, including children. Thank you so much, KTLA, for saying how it should be said, including children, during a week-long operation that also netted hundreds of arrests. The annual Operation Reclaim and Rebuild was held last week and coincided with the run-up of the Super Bowl in Los Angeles. Oh, but I thought it was a myth. Once again, for the 30,000th time, I thought this was a myth. It was held last week and coincided with the run-up of the Super Bowl in Los Angeles, according to Los Angeles County Sheriff Department. Sheriff Alex Villanueva said 74 adults and 8 children were rescued, while 34 suspected traffickers were arrested. About 200 sex buyers known as Johns were also taken into custody as part of the operation. Remember, this is only 1 week. Villanueva said, "This is just one small slice of what happens throughout the entire year. Yet myths surrounding alleged links between human trafficking and major sporting events like Super Bowl abound. Academic studies and new reports." Oh, KTLA, you were doing so good. You were just doing so good saying how it was, because now they're citing the Notre Dame article. You guys remember the Notre Dame article that I read to you guys right before the Super Bowl? That's what they're citing here. That's what they're citing here. Academics, have repeatedly shown that trafficking does not increase the Super Bowl. Really? You got 500 arrests in a sting. Guys, if you don't follow my podcast, go follow it. The link is in the description below. I have it in audio and video form. We go through headlines on the daily. And when you start paying attention to the pattern of how this is being reported, there are stings, for sure. There are stings. There are not big stings like this, not 500. It's not like this, And I understand that this happens indiscreetly. This is an underground type of operation and industry. But to say that this doesn't heighten around Super Bowl, I'm just going to call BS on it. I'm just going to call BS. Academic studies and news reports have repeatedly shown that trafficking doesn't increase in Super Bowl and other champions. I'm just bewildered at why they are trying to do this. Law enforcement crackdowns during these events often lead to the arrest of local street-based sex workers instead. Really? Because it says here that 74 adults and 8 children were rescued, right? And again, Go back to my rant. I talk about the compounded complex trauma that happens within the brain activity of, these workers, and, why they feel forced and, against their will, or, they willingly stay with their trafficker. There's a lot of trauma bond, psychological manipulation, fear-based coercion that happens. And we have to also understand that, and it must be factored in these things. It must be. We can't think of human trafficking without factoring that in it. It is in it. It's in the mix. And it's in the mix. We can't do it without it. So with that being said, my rant paid dividends. My point proven. Although they will lie to your face after telling you that there was all of this activity happening, right? It is a slice of what happens. It is absolutely a slice, but it's actually dispersed everywhere. It's dispersed, meaning that there aren't Super Bowl party atmospheres every single day, right? There are spas, there are individualistic Johns that visit, or they hire the sex worker or the victim, because some of these workers, they're all mixed in. Some of them are working against their will. Let's be honest. Like, some of them are consensual. Some of them do this willingly, and some of them are forced against their will to do this, and they have to appear consensual. But the thing is, it's not every day that we have a Super Bowl or party-like atmosphere like this, where people are gathering all in one place in a party-like setting, and frequently buying, transactioning sex like this. So to say and to lie in front of our faces and say that this is not heightened activity, while reporting that they made white activity arrests, because it was in a concentrated city is so irresponsible. I'm just like, I can't believe that grown adult people write things like this and try to permeate this type of rhetoric out to the community. It is extremely harmful. It's extremely harmful to the victims out there actively still forced against their will. It is harmful to current day survivors that are overcoming their trauma and going through aftercare and rehabilitation. It is absolutely harmful. And as hard as I come out for these types of narratives, is the same tenacity that I come out in my efforts and grassroots to fight against this. We just got to continue talking about this. So anyway, guys, that's the spill. I needed to rant about this because I saw it and I just could not believe my eyes that they contradicted themselves, essentially. Anyway, thanks so much for your support. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing, liking, subscribing. Be sure to hit the bell as well. I will be coming out. I just, it just hit me. I need to just, this needs to be talked about more, right? Because I just see the rhetoric in the mainstream, and absolutely not. Absolutely not. We need to keep talking about it the way it is, real, raw, not candy coating any of this. This is a real problem, and we've got to start calling it for what it is. Anyway, guys, I love you. I'll catch you guys in the next episode.